The room goes quiet the second your old friend says it. I remember when you talked about this years ago. Nobody answers. The applause across the restaurant keeps going for the man giving interviews near the windows. Cameras flash. People congratulate him for building the company everyone suddenly wishes they'd invested in. You stare at the coffee growing cold in front of you. You don't recognize the logo because it's new. You recognize the idea because it used to be yours. For one impossible second, you convince yourself they're wrong. Maybe it's similar. Maybe coincidence happens. Then you hear him explain the product in an interview. Word for word, it's the same problem you stayed awake solving in your apartment 6 years earlier. Only he kept going. You didn't. Back then, it never felt like giving up. It felt like being responsible. Your father had just retired early after his health failed. Your younger sister needed help paying tuition. Rent kept climbing. Every month became another calculation. Dreams are expensive when someone else depends on your paycheck. So every morning you drove to work telling yourself the same sentence. Just one more year. 1 year became 2, then 3. The notebook stayed in a kitchen drawer. Every few months you'd open it, smile for a minute, then close it again. Life always found a reason to wait. One evening, your wife found the notebook while looking for batteries. You still think about this. Sometimes. So why don't you build it? You laughed. People like me don't build companies. She looked at you for a long moment. I didn't ask who builds them. You never answered. Instead, you picked up another overtime shift. The strange thing about abandoned ideas isn't that they disappear. It's that they keep existing somewhere, waiting for someone who believes they're worth carrying. Years passed. You got promoted. The paycheck grew. Your responsibilities grew faster. Then one morning, an article appeared on your phone. A startup had raised millions solving a problem almost identical to the sketches hidden in your drawer. You didn't tell anyone. You simply closed the article and went to work. That night, you pulled the notebook out again. The pages had yellowed around the edges. Your handwriting looked younger, more certain. You noticed something that hurt more than the article itself. The date. You had written those notes almost 8 months before the company was founded. You weren't late. You were first. You just stopped. For weeks, you couldn't let it go. Every interview felt personal. Every headline sounded like it belonged to someone else using your voice. You became difficult to live with. Your wife would ask simple questions. What do you want for dinner? I don't care. You okay? I'm fine. But she knew better. One Saturday, she placed the notebook on the table between you. You keep mourning a life you never lived. You frowned. I had the same idea. I know. I could have built it. I know. So what am I supposed to do with that? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she traced one finger across the worn cover. You've spent years proving someone else could succeed with your idea. She slid the notebook back toward you. You still haven't answered whether you could. The sentence stayed with you longer than the regret. Not because it erased the pain, because it changed the question. You stopped obsessing over what another man built. You started paying attention to why you never tried. It wasn't lack of talent. It wasn't timing. It wasn't even money. It was fear dressed up as responsibility. Fear sounds noble when it wears practical clothes. Months later, you met the founder at a conference. Pure accident. He stood alone after a panel discussion, stirring sugar into terrible hotel coffee. You introduced yourself. You probably hear this all the time, you said. But I had almost the exact same idea years before. He smiled without surprise. I do hear that. You nodded awkwardly. I'm serious. I believe you. That wasn't the response you expected. He looked at you for a second before speaking again. You know what almost every one of those conversations has in common. You waited. They had the idea. He shrugged gently. I had 10,000 Tuesdays after the idea. He wasn't arrogant. He sounded tired, like someone remembering years nobody celebrates, the failed prototypes, the rejected pitches, the nights wondering if everyone else had been right. Success hadn't happened because he imagined something first. It happened because he kept showing up after the excitement disappeared. Driving home, you realized you'd spent 6 years competing with a version of him that never existed. You envied the headlines. Not the lonely mornings, not the risk, not the uncertainty, not the hundreds of invisible days between the first sketch and the first success. That night, you opened a brand new notebook, Not to rewrite the old idea. Someone else already owned that story. Instead, you filled the first page with a different problem, a smaller one you understood. Your wife walked past the table and noticed the empty coffee cup beside you. Working late, you smiled without looking up. For a while, she kissed the top of your head and quietly turned off the kitchen light. When the house fell silent, the pages in front of you were still blank enough to become something that belonged to no one else.